This is Teiyu, your emotional support animal. How are you guys doing? Well, hello there, Musica and Grilson. How are you guys doing? Let me just do this and do this. Okay. So, we're doing a study stream today. Hey, Teiyu, uncertified but loyal and comfy emotional support code? Well, yeah, that's me. That's me. Hi there, Musica. How are you? So, yeah. It's been a heck of a while since our last study stream. Almost a year. I don't know where that time went. But, yeah, I went ahead and, read up a little bit. But also, well, okay, a little bit. I really just read up a little bit. But mostly we're going to be repeating what we did last stream. Because that was like 11 months or something ago. So, yeah. Let's get on that. Now, I will say, I am not okay. I'm just emotionally not doing well. But I hope this will be, something to use my mind on and stuff. And, yeah. So, let's, to get us back into the swing of things, I'm gonna use, where is it? Here. I'm gonna use this thing, frickin' Wikipedia, to get us an idea of what's going on. Hello Neil, how are you doing? So, Wikipedia. Factfulness, 10 Reasons We're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think, is a 2018 book by Swedish physician, professor of international health at Karolinska Institute, and statistician Hans Rosling, with his son Ola Rosling and daughter-in-law Anna Rosling Renland. The book was published posthumously a year after Hans Rosling died from pancreatic cancer. In the book, Rosling suggests that the vast majority of people are wrong about the state of the world. He demonstrates that his test subjects believe the world is poorer, less healthy, and more dangerous than it actually is, attributing this not to random chance but to misinformation. That is actually incorrect. Someone should really get on that. Hi there, Cleaver. How are you doing? The thing is, he does not attribute it to misinformation. He attributes it to inherent biases in our thinking. I've been doing static exercises for 3 hours. I can calculate the tension in the news when someone snaps from doing too much math now. Jesus. Neil, thank you so much for the streak. Bill Gates highlighted the book as one of his suggested 5 books worth reading, offering a purchase. It has not only been praised but criticized for presenting a too positive picture of global conditions, especially environmental matters and inequalities in human societies. I'm sure it has been. I feel like I feel like this page has been written by someone who's not actually such a big fan, considering that they got something wrong there in the first paragraph, and they're kinda emphasizing this point more. Criticized for presenting to Hi there, Golan. What kind of exercise would you like me to do? And can you remind me of that later? I feel like we should get to that in a moment. Although, finally I have a job again. Oh, yay! Lucky you. You're calling our beloved wiki editors posers? Well, maybe. But yeah, so the criticism. I think I haven't read the whole book yet. He does get into it a little bit about, like, you know, we might get to that part later, but he's very adamant that he's not like an optimist who is like convinced that the world is actually good or something. He's convinced that the world is on a good path towards improving. And I think he's above all very much concerned that our instincts that make us believe the world is worse than it is can actually make the world worse, right? If you look at a lot of the people who are ruining our world, they're doing so because they believe the world is bad, right? Like, just look at frickin'... There was a lot of backlash, for instance, to that new Superman movie, which was really, you know, it had this kind of positive view on the world. And, you know, people don't like that anymore. Some people are really not into that, because that feels like woke to them or something, you know? If you had a meteorite, you might share a video this reminds me of. Oh, by John Green. Oh, John Green, without the second, I mean the last D. It does have a second D, but not a third one. Yeah. I would agree with him on that. I mean, considering that, like, you know, I kind of interpreted that last bit into him. He didn't actually say that in the book yet, at least. There's two distinct kinds of backlashes the Superman movie had. Really? Which ones? So, Rosling criticized the notion of dividing the world into the developed world and the developing world, calling it an outdated view. Yeah. He shows that today most countries are developed and the others are not how developing countries were when the term became popular. Instead, he offers a 4-category model based on income per person, adjusted for price differences. Yeah. Heck. I took photos of the thing, but the thing, I didn't actually upload those photos anywhere. I have access to them now. But yeah, we'll get into that. I just want to use this as like a jumping off point to, you know, because my brain isn't working so super well. The book also stresses that many people think the world is getting worse, when in fact it is not. Early in the book, the authors describe a survey in which 10,000 recipients were polled for their views on the world. They interpret the survey's results as showing that 80% of recipients know less about the world than chimps, quote-unquote, would have, i.e. that they did worse than random guessing. This, the authors claim, shows that the media systematically skew data and trends and select stories to make people think that the world is getting worse. Which is also true, but also not entirely what they're saying. That is just a little aside. One was political because there were certain allusions to certain things in the world. No comment. Wrong stream. And the other one was dog woke Superman beaten bad. Dog? What? What does that mean? Dog woke Superman beaten bad? What does that mean? I cannot make sense of that, I'm sorry. Yeah, and last time we got into the gap instinct and most of the way through the negativity instinct. The gap instinct saying that there's a huge gap, you know, like between the developed world and the developing world. And we got a little into the negativity instinct as meaning, like, you know, yeah, we kind of over focus on the negative in the way that we think about things. Some people thought the dog was too silly and Superman getting the shit kicked out of him was cringe. I mean, I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know anything about a dog. So, there's that. Okay. So, let's... Some people, of course, are purposely avoiding Twitter and stuff. Yeah, that's fair. That is only healthy, honestly. So, here's my notes. I hope they're not too small. They might be too small. Maybe I should zoom in. How do I zoom in? There's got to be a better way to do that. Hang on. Zoomy? Yeah, I think I would like it. I don't know. I'll just do it like this. So, here's... where did I stop last time? Right. Last time, these are the notes I took. So, I read through everything we went through last time, and underlined a few interesting points. But, yeah. Let's go through both of that. Those notes and the underlines. I can see even Dog has superheroics nowadays being silly and positive-ish, rather than Grimdark. Hi there, Pico. How are you doing? And I dig it. Peacemaker comes to mind. Aww. I can see even darker superheroics nowadays being silly and positive-ish. How do you mean? Like, can you see the positive in those darker stories, or do you sense that even the ones that seem dark are actually more positive? Okay, so Factfulness. Yeah, it starts... the introduction starts with the caption, "Why I Love the Circus," and explains his path towards learning how to sword swallow. And ends with... wow, at a dummy. And ends with how he'll often do a sword swallow routine at the end of his lectures. Like, kind of yeah. Occasionally I demonstrate this ancient Indian art at the end of one of my lectures on global development. I step up onto the table and rip off my professional checked shirt to reveal a black vest top decorated with gold sequined lightning bolt. I call for complete silence, and to the swirling beat of a snare drum, I slowly slide the army bayonet down my throat. I stretch up my arms. The audience goes wild. And why does he do that? Well, he gets into that later. First, there's all these, those famous tests. But, like, Peacemaker has sex and the second season can probably not be ran in Germany without heavy edits, but the movie takes a considerably sillier tone even within its darker narrative. Like, silly as in lighthearted, or silly as in, like, frickin' Deadpool? Because those are very different things. Hi there, longtime fan. How are you doing? Hang on. I need my little ramp thing. I don't know what to call it. What do you call, like, this sloped surface plastic thing for you to put something on? I don't know. So there's this famous multiple choice test. Well, he asks questions like, In all low-income countries across the world today, how many girls finish the first 5 grades of school? Is it 20, 40, or 60%? And the answer is C. It is 60%. Kind of like Deadpool, but a tad less nihilistic, although that might be the themes and not the presentation. I mean, dark themes are fine. I find that I actually really hate Deadpool. Like, I enjoyed the first movie, but the second one made me feel super miserable. So like, I think the presentation honestly matters more, like in the way things are framed, you know? Yeah, so where does the majority of the world population live? Is it in low-income countries, in middle-income countries, or in high-income countries? By the way, I first checked A, low income. It is actually middle income. Or, wait, is it? Yeah, it's B. In the last 20 years, the proportion of the world population living in extreme poverty has almost halved, remained more or less the same, or... Oh wait, almost doubled. Almost doubled was the first one. Or has it almost halved? And it has almost halved. What is the life expectancy of the world today? 50 years, 60 years, or 70 years? And it's 70. There are 2 billion children in the world today, aged 0 to 15 years old. How many children will there be in the year 2100, according to the United Nations? Will it be 4 billion, 3 billion, or 2 billion? It's 2 billion. The first season of Peacemaker portrays the main character as a well-meaning dude bro, but he still is problematic. When instead of it being used for grit, it is played for laughs while still engaging with the themes and becoming better. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. That's not a bad thing. The UN predicts that by 2100, the world population will have increased by another 4 billion people. What is the main reason? A. There will be more children. B. There will be more adults. Or C. There will be more very old people. And the answer is B. There will be more adults. Because, spoiler alert, the number of children doesn't increase. It's just that, people live longer. The ones who do, the children don't die and instead keep living to become adults. And those adults will become, the additional billion. That will be added to the total population. How did the number of deaths per year from natural disasters change over the last 100 years? A. More than doubled. B. Remained about the same. Or C. Decreased to less than half. And it's C. It decreased to less than half. There are roughly 7 billion people in the world today. Which map shows best where they live? Each figure represents 1 billion people. Well, you can't see the figure, unfortunately. But, basically the idea is that, hang on, this is question 8. So, basically what it shows is that there's 1 billion in the Americas, 1 billion in the Africa, 1 in Europe, and 4 in Asia. The number of children goes down in every country that gains economic progress and quality of life increases. Yeah, it's true. How many of the world's 1-year-old children today have been vaccinated against some disease? Is it 20%, 50%, or 80%? And it is, in fact, 80%. It's funny, like, I can tell where I originally, when I first read this, checked the boxes. And even thinking that, like, okay, I get the idea, like it's gonna be more positive than I think. I couldn't go above 50. I couldn't imagine it being 80%, but it's true. Worldwide, 30-year-old men have spent 10 years in school, on average. How many years have women of the same age spent in school? Is it 9 years, 6 years, or 3 years? And of course, it is 9 years. In 1996, tigers, giant pandas, and black rhinos were all listed as endangered. How many of these three species are more critically endangered today? And it is none of them. Thank you for the alert, Dami. How many people in the world have some access to electricity? Is it 20, 50, or 80%? You know the drill. It is 80%. By the way, I hope only I am hearing the cracking in the music right now. And finally, global climate experts believe that over the next 100 years, the average temperature will A. get warmer, B. remain the same, or C. get colder. And you know the drill, it's not actually an improvement, it will actually get warmer. That is the one that actually gets worse. Schooling and education is weird because there are underdeveloped countries where the education is highly valued regardless of quality. Huh. That's a fair point. So yeah. Now, the chimpanzees. Yeah, the idea is that he gets into the chimpanzees because, like, yeah. He's tested this in a lot of different places. And yeah. Basically, he posits the idea that, like, if he took like 3 bananas and marked them with like A, B, or C, and then just threw bunches of them into a chimpanzee enclosure and just, you know, marked the first one to be grabbed as like their answer, it would be random, and they would score so much better because people systematically get the answers wrong. Like, yeah, here's a statistic. In Scandinavia, where he's had a lot of lectures, like he's a big name, people know about him and what he does. Like up to like a quarter of people get the right answer. So almost as many as, like, you know, a third. Which would be, you know, obviously what would happen if it was just random guessing. Right, that one is specifically for question 3. That one was about the global poverty, extreme poverty. But yeah, like, most answered like under 10%. Most answered like most. God, sorry, my brain isn't working. Most countries had less than 10% of people who answered correctly. Russia, for example, the education is the main vehicle for prolonging the period you don't need to be drafted into the mandatory military service. Oh dear. Huh. That is not what I considered. I thought you were talking about, like, the Far East. Well, like, you know, we all know that, you know, education is highly valued there. And yeah, interestingly enough, yeah, 86% of people get the final question about climate change right. So that, you know, that is a public awareness win. You know, that is something that needs to be addressed very much. But everything else is, like, systematically wrong. Devastatingly so. And yeah, the chimp's errors would be equally shared between the 2 wrong answers, but human errors all tend to be in one direction. Every group of people I ask thinks the world is more frightening, more violent, and more hopeless. In short, more dramatic than it really is. Most of Far East is developed countries. Yeah, that's true. It's true. I mean, so is Russia. Just, you know, it's a complex thing. Obviously, that's like a bleh. Nah, bro. I mean, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. So, so then he walks us through the whole process of him figuring out like where the issue is. He thought for a while that like everyone was just working with outdated information. But you know, he armed himself with like the most recent stats and everything. The world is more frightening, but it isn't worse. Yeah, I mean that does make more sense, but like the scariness is more because we're kind of enveloped in it. But like the reason to be scared is overall less. But like it bears mentioning that this book is from 2018. So some recent developments have not really been encapsulated into it. But yeah, overall the trends are still there. So yeah, so he armed himself with the newest knowledge and stuff, but he realized that it wasn't working. To quote again, even people who loved my lectures, I sadly realized, weren't really hearing them. They might indeed be inspired momentarily, but after the lecture, they were still stuck in their old negative worldview. The new ideas just wouldn't take. Even straight after my presentations, I would hear people expressing beliefs about poverty or population growth that I had just proven wrong with the facts. I almost gave up. He had a defining moment at the 2015 World Economic Forum in Davos, where like, you know, there were all these world leaders about the world economic situation and whatnot. And he was worried that like, you know, everyone there would be so educated that everyone would like, you know, no one would have anything to learn from his stuff, and he would just sit up there looking like an idiot. But yeah, to quote again, I shouldn't have worried. This top international audience, who would spend the next few days explaining the world to each other, did indeed know more than the general public about poverty. A stunning 61% of them got it right. But on the other two questions, about future population growth and the availability of basic primary health care, they still did worse than the chimps. Here were people who had access to all the latest data and to advisors who would continuously update them. Their ignorance could not possibly be down to an outdated worldview, yet even they were getting the basic facts about the world wrong. Yeah, he figured out that it's all about, like, actual instinct. It's interesting, right? Because seeing data makes the world less scary, but also makes it less exciting in the other direction, because the world is banal and complicated. Yeah, he does get into that. Yeah. About why the human brain is so hardwired to this dramatic instinct. To quote again, we are interested in gossip and dramatic stories, which used to be the only source of news and useful information. We crave sugar and fat, which used to be life-saving sources of energy when food was scarce. We have many instincts that used to be useful thousands of years ago, but we live in a different world now. And yeah, just like with the craving for sugar, which can lead to obesity and whatnot, we have to teach our children and ourselves to manage that. But yeah, he does concede that we still need those dramatic instincts to give meaning to our world and get us through the day. Sugar catching strays, indeed. That bastard. Stepping back a moment. Yeah, here's a line. To quote again, and I'm convinced it is not the fault of an evil-minded media, propaganda, fake news, or wrong facts. Fucking Wikipedia. Who did that? Who wrote that? He very much insists that it's not the media itself. Although, there is something to be said, you know, it is true
Teiyu,
that these...
Teiyu, my friend showed me an acorn and asked me what it is. An oak tree, he answered. He was surprised, really. Yes, in a nutshell.
Hi there, Snowhive. How are you doing? Okay. Yeah. He insists that it comes from the way our brains work, and yeah, one of the things he does to explain it is to show like one of those optical illusions. You know that line where it has like these arrows pointing outwards and the arrows pointing inwards, and the one with the arrows pointing inwards looks bigger because of the context. It looks longer. The line itself. Hi there, Buggo. Thank you for the hydrate. But yeah. And you know, even if you know that the line with the arrows facing inward is not actually longer, you think that it is. Thank you for the hate rate. What? That's not what I said. Also, I just remembered I need to do the squats. Hydrate, yeah. I got it. So, I have to do squats. It was 20 squats, I think. Yeah. Hydrate, yes. The psychological effect is called anchoring. And yeah, he insists, you should not feel bad about, you should not feel bad about getting it wrong, but just be like curious about how this happens, where this, false idea comes from. Okay. Hi there, Estienne, how are you doing? Hey, so, okay, 20 squats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, god damn it. Don't get stuck there. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Ugh. Blah, blah, blah. It was just, it was the workout routine. Whew. Okay. Yeah. I don't think that's what Arm Day does, but fair enough. Okay. So... Okay. Getting back to the sword swallowing thing. Yeah. Buggo, thank you so much for your continued support. It really means a lot. Almost 3 years, goddamn. Chimp DNA in the goat? Maybe a little bit. Fucking... Why is it giving me notifications? I told it not to give me notifications. My god. Hang on. Is it? It is. I don't know. Hi. So. Yeah, so the idea is that he challenges people's worldview. Let me just read it out. Blah, blah, blah. Before my circus act, I will have been testing my audience's factual knowledge about the world. I will have shown them that the world is completely different from what they thought. I will have proven to them that many of the changes they think will never happen have already happened. I will have been struggling to awaken their curiosity about what is possible, which is absolutely different from what they believe and from what they see in the news every day. I swallow the sword because I want the audience to realize how wrong their intuitions can be. I want them to realize that what I have shown them, both the sword swallowing and the material about the world that came before it, however much it conflicts with their preconceived ideas, however impossible it seems, is true. I want people, when they realize they have been wrong about the world, to feel not embarrassment, but that childlike sense of wonder, inspiration, and curiosity that I remember from the circus, and that I still get every time I discover I've been wrong. Wow, how is that even possible? I think that's beautiful. Time for me to focus up and write all the yellow listening. Thank you. We need to teach him better. Maybe we can convince him that legs are merely lower arms. Get him to train them more. Lower arms? If anything, arms are just like forelegs, right? You're being silly. But yeah. Here's, why I wrote this. You know, I don't know if I can get the ideas together right now, but yeah, humor plays a big role in helping you restructure what you think you know about the world. Because, you know, the predominant theory about why we laugh is that it's a relief of tension as we realize that have a moment of confusion and then realize that things actually kind of make sense in a way that we didn't expect. And that is how humor can be involved in, you know, really restructuring the way that you think about the world. Optical illusions don't happen in the eyes, but the brain. Data is therapy. Okay, so we've got to develop tools to control our dramatic instincts. And those dramatic instincts are, number one, the gap instinct. So he starts with a whole anecdote about a lecture. Hang on, let me read it out. The child mortality rate in Saudi Arabia. The child... Hang on. Sorry. Yeah, he has a little lecture on child mortality rates in different countries. And the reason he is so obsessed with those numbers is that it's not just about the children, but he considers that number to be like a huge thermometer for the whole country. To quote, "Because children are very fragile, there are so many things that can kill them. When only 14 children die out of 1,000 in Malaysia, that means that the other 986 survive. Their parents and their society managed to protect them from all the dangers that could have killed them. Germs, starvation, violence, and so on. So this number 14 tells us that most families in Malaysia have enough food, their sewage systems don't leak into their drinking water, they have good access to primary health care, and mothers can read and write. It doesn't just tell us about the health of the children, it measures the quality of the whole society." Okay. And then, he gets into child mortality rates from like 35 years ago. Well, at the time of the lecture. And, And yeah, Saudi Arabian society has made progress. Child deaths per 1,000 dropped from 242 to 35 in just 33 years, which is faster than Sweden, who took 77 years. And progress, yes. And Malaysia, 93. Yeah. Malaysia went from 93 to 14. I think that's what it was. Yeah. And yeah. You won't find any countries in the world where child mortality has increased, because the world in general is getting better. Okay, so now he gets into the first mega misconception, as he calls them, which is that the world is divided in two. Okay. Yeah, here. Here's where I got confused, because I was expecting this conversation to take place earlier. Starting up the lecture again. Hang on. You know what? I'm just gonna read. Starting up the lecture again, I explained that child mortality was highest in tribal societies in the rainforest and among traditional farmers in the remote rural areas across the world. The people you see in exotic documentaries on TV, those parents struggle harder than anyone to make their families survive, and still they lose almost half of their children. Fortunately, fewer and fewer people have to live under such dreadful conditions. A young student in the first row raised his hand. He tilted his head and said, "They can never live like us." All over the room, other students nodded in support. Hey there, Mojan Aspa. Hello, thank you for the 10 stream streak. You probably thought I would be surprised. I was not at all. This was the same kind of gap statement I had heard many times before. I wasn't surprised, I was thrilled. This is what I had hoped for. Our dialogue went something like this. Sorry, who do you mean when you say they? I mean people in other countries. Countries other than Sweden? No, I mean the non-Western countries. They can't live like us. It won't work. Aha! As if now I understood. You mean like Japan? No, not Japan. They have a Western lifestyle. So what about Malaysia? They don't have a Western lifestyle, right? No, Malaysia is not Western. All countries that haven't adopted the Western lifestyle yet. They shouldn't. You know what I mean. No, I don't know what you mean. Please explain. You're talking about the West and the rest, right? Yes, exactly. Is Mexico West? And yeah. Anyway, the point is, I'm confused. You started with them and us and then changed it to the West and the rest. I'm very interested to understand what you mean. I have heard these labels used many times, but honestly I've never understood them. And yeah, some other woman chimes in like, hey, maybe we can define it like this. We in the West have few children and few of the children die, while they in the rest have many children and many of the children die. And our good old Hans was stoked. Because he had some data. Okay. Let me grab that data, because I actually have access to this. Hang on. Okay. Let me real quick. Hang on. Here. And here. Give me just a moment. I'm preparing a graph. So. Didn't know the Swedes had the clan underneath it. Those. Ah, Suba, hi there. Thank you so much for the raid. This is Teiyu, your emotional support animal. I strive to create a comfy and safe environment for mental health. Right now we're studying Factfulness to learn about the fact that the world is not as bad as we think it is. Based on facts and stuff. How was your stream? Miyajik mix. What the heck is that?
Oh! Oh, that's
Yeah,
true.
also,
You can do
also
that now.
Bing Bong talks. How do you squeeze him?
A left click.
I'm Bing Bong.
Hi, Bing Bong. Do you love me?
Definitely not.
Oh.
Oh no! Oh no!
How are you, Siva? So. Oops. Spoilers in the background. It would. Damn it. Okay, so he showed them this graph. And was like, ah, yes, so we have a pretty clear-cut division here, right? We have, wait. Right. Not the 1965, but pretty clear-cut division. So, over here, we have the majority of people, China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, etc. Where babies per woman is like around 6, 7, 8, etc. And the mortality rate out of 1,000 is, yeah, about almost a third, maybe even a fourth. Pretty high up. And then down here we have few children and low mortality rate, like less than 100, 24 in 1,000. Very nice. Lovely division. 8 babies for a woman. Damn, they need to stop importing babies and start manufacturing women. Yeah. What the heck? Okay. But then, you know, spoilers. That graph is from 1965. So, when did he have this lecture? It was in 1998? 1998? Please? Maybe? 1995. And by then... Oop, don't... Stop. Dang it. Go away. Okay. And by then, it's like, huh. Suddenly, there's not really such a clear-cut division. Suddenly, it's a lot more like, yeah, there's just most of the population is here. And just a couple of stragglers over here. And even then, those stragglers... not as bad as they were back then. I wonder if he will bring up the ozone layer in the climate change section. I mean, yeah, he did already bring up that that is very much a thing that is in fact getting worse. But yeah. Okay. There's a bunch of adjustments you can make in this stuff. and lifespan. Daily income. And life expectancy. Yeah. Which, look at this beautiful graph. And of course, little dip. Little dip around 2020 for some reason. But yeah. The ozone layer is the case of us clearly fixing climate which occurred in the last 70 years, like we did it before. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, let's put this away again for now. Someone excellently nudged the graph and had to quickly fix the population to match. Yeah, that was probably it. Okay. Yeah. So basically most people are kind of just in the middle. Oh, thank you for the lurk. Okay. Onward.
Hello.
Wow. Hello, Suba. To summarize, low-income countries are much more developed than most people think, and vastly fewer people live in them. So, what's the next interesting thing? Yeah, now he gets into the four income levels. He doesn't like the world developing countries. Insists that we shouldn't use it, and then people are like, so what should we call them instead? And again, it's the same as consumption. We and them. What should we call them instead? So, yeah, he suggests the 4 income levels, which, let me see if I can find something about that on the website. Or maybe just on Google. Factfulness 4 income levels. It's gotta be, yeah, here it is. But yeah, there's gonna be an ad break first, and I need to take a peek. So, yeah. I'll see you guys later. In 5 minutes. Be right back. Death and destruction. Oh, these tenders my loins. What the fuck was that? What the fuck? I don't know why that made me laugh. I think I had this like moment of like I was just spontaneously saying whatever came to my head, and then I was like, wait, that's funny. Why is that funny? 3 questions. Do I want that? Do I want that? And do I want that? So like when it comes, like for example, when it comes to playing a difficult game that only frustrates you, it's like, okay, why do you do that? Do you really want to do that game? Like, do you really want to do that game? Like, are you in it with your heart? Is your heart there? And do you want to really want to play that game? Or do you just want to play a game? Like, why is it that game? Is that really the one that you want? And possibly the most important, do you want that? Or do you just feel like you're supposed to want it? And of course,
You have a bit of the same brain.
show it to me. Show me the big booty. Very good, very good.
And with the reflection too.
With a reflection, man, that is some detail.
Got a
Thumbs
badass
up.
over here.
Nice, nice. Okay,
I used to fill the full screen.
but
Okay,
I see.
it does fill the full screen. Thank you,
I
Pete.
comprehend. I regret.
I am an amateur.
We got something among us. I think it's... I'm ready to be voted off the ship now.
Let's say we can all just go play Among Us at this rate.
come on, dude. At least get on. Things going wrong that I'm under my control. You know. You know. Well then. It was just such good timing. Okay. けでもひがまない思い出がバカみたいたまにろくな男やない揃いの指輪外しますざまみろせせいするわななのよこの涙バカみたいAlso could take a break, you're shopping for a boppin'. Aw shit, I wouldn't want to be shopping for a boppin'. If I wanted to shop for a bop, I would go on Amazon. Because then I could tell them to just give it to my neighbor. I stuttered a little bit, but I think I'm relatively proud of that one. Kind of lost the metaphor there, yeah. Why did I say that? Why did I say anything? Why do I say things?
Hey there, kiddo. I heard you're in the market for some sexy toads. Ara, my dude. Ara.
Oh, sorry about that. I ended up kind of just staring at a wall blankly for a few minutes. Okay. 4 income levels. Let's try and function. So, let's make this a beaker. Put that away and put this in the middle. So, he imagines these almost like, yeah, I'm just gonna read a little bit. I used to do that in class. I would look at the shapes of bubbles in the drywall and use them to draw consonants for my fantasy worlds. Hell yeah. That is so real. So, think of the 4 income levels as the levels of a computer game. Everyone wants to move from level 1 to level 2 and upward through the levels from there. Only it's a very strange computer game because level 1 is the hardest. Let's play. Level 1. You start on level 1 with $1 per day. Your 5 children have to spend hours walking barefoot with your single plastic bucket, back and forth, to fetch water from a dirty mud hole an hour's walk away. On their way home, they gather firewood, and you prepare the same grey porridge that you've been eating at every meal, every day for your whole life. Except during the months when the meager soil yielded no crops and you went to bed hungry. One day, your youngest daughter develops a nasty cough. Smoke from the indoor fire is weakening her lungs. You can't afford antibiotics, and then 1 month later she is dead. This is extreme poverty, yet you keep struggling on. If you're lucky and the yields are good, you can maybe sell some surplus crops and manage to earn more than $2 a day, which would move you to the next level. Good luck. Roughly 1 billion people live like this. I started something recently, counseling session. Oh, cool. I'm glad to hear that. How's it treating you? Why is Hyrule getting invaded in the background? It just happens. Every few thousand years or so. I guess it was about time for it to happen again. Sometimes you think, oh god, I wish that weren't me. Hang on, let me take a sip. How are you doing, Moore? Level 2. You've made it. In fact, you've quadrupled your income and now you earn $4 a day. $3 extra every day. What are you going to do with all this money? Now you can buy food that you didn't grow yourself. You can afford chickens, which means eggs. You save some money and buy sandals for your children, and a bike, and more plastic buckets. Now it takes you only half an hour to fetch water for the day. You buy a gas stove so your children can attend school instead of gathering wood. When there's power, they do their homework under a bulb. But the electricity is too unstable for a freezer. You save up for mattresses so you don't have to sleep on the mud floor. Life is much better now, but still very uncertain. A single illness and you would have to sell most of your possessions to buy medicine. That would throw you back to level 1 again. Another $3 a day would be good, but to experience really drastic improvement, you need to quadruple again. If you can land a job in the local garment industry, you will be the first member of your family to bring home a salary. Roughly 3 billion people live like this today. And you can see the images there, like there are mattresses. There's food that looks like that, I guess. You know, it has something in it, not just porridge. There's a gas stove, there's a bicycle, or a, yeah, that's a bicycle, or a moped? I don't know. You're good? That's good. It was okay. My therapist noticed a pattern with things going on in my life. So the talks will continue in depth soon. Okay, yeah. You have been, you know, noticing patterns and stuff like that before, so I'm sure it will be fruitful. Sometimes I wonder if my life would be better if I were Koichi Komeiji instead of me. God. Maybe. Level 3. Wow, you did it. You work multiple jobs, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and managed to quadruple your income again to $16 a day. Your savings are impressive, and you install a cold water tap. No more fetching water. With a stable electric line, the kids' homework improves, and you can buy a fridge that lets you store food and serve different dishes each day. You save to buy a motorcycle, which means you can travel to a better paying job at a factory in town. Unfortunately, you crash on your way there one day and you have to use money you had saved for your children's education to pay the medical bills. You recover, and thanks to your savings, you are not thrown back a level. 2 of your children start high school. If they manage to finish, they will be able to get better paying jobs than you ever had. To celebrate, you take the whole family on its first ever vacation, one afternoon to the beach, just for fun. Roughly 2 billion people live like this today. Hi there, Crystal. Yeah, like, this is starting to look like, from the photos, familiar to something that I grew up with. Like, it was not that different back then. Like, you know, fucking 10 decades ago. When I was young. Level 4. You have more than $32 a day. You are a rich consumer, and $3 more a day makes very little difference to your everyday life. That's why you think $3, which can change the life of someone living in extreme poverty, is not a lot of money. You have more than 12 years of education, and you have been on an airplane on vacation. You can eat out once a month, and you can buy a car. Of course, you have hot and cold water indoors. But you know about this already. Since you are reading this book, I'm pretty sure you live on level 4. I don't have to describe it for you to understand. The difficulty, when you have always known this high level of income, is to understand the huge differences between the other 3 levels. People on level 4 must struggle hard not to misunderstand the reality of the other 6 billion people in the world. Roughly 1 billion people live like this today. So, yeah. And yeah, of course, even though he described it as like, you know, moving up through the levels, from level 1 to level 4, that doesn't really happen. But, you know, it does happen that you can start on one level and rise to the next. That is not unheard of. And in fact, he's been through it. But we'll get to that in a moment. God, why are my headphones broken? I don't like that. So, let's put this. Image. Here we go. Right down there. And this guy goes over here. Okay. So, the gap instinct. Humans have a general dramatic instinct towards binary thinking. We love dichotomies like good versus bad and heroes versus villains. My country versus the rest. And it's a dramatic instinct because it implies conflict, and we do it without thinking all the time. Yeah, now he gets into journalists again. They set up their narratives as conflicts between 2 opposing people, views, or groups. And yeah, he doesn't very explicitly get into it, but yeah, this is like, yeah, we are naturally, our brains function as like storytelling brains. We tell ourselves stories to make sense of the world. And this kind of conflict is a general, basic structure of a narrative like that. Okay, so how to control the gap instinct? He gets into three. He gets into three. Warning signs of a dramatic depiction of the world that engages your gap instinct. Comparison of averages. When you compare averages, often the difference seems very dramatic. But, to quote, averages mislead by hiding a spread in a single number. Like he has a graph about average math scores between men and women. And, you know, the women score worse. Like there's a 540 for the men and around 500 for the women. Somewhere around there. And yeah, then he has that as like on a chart, on a graph, going up and down the two lines. But then he puts those lines, those numbers, like all of the scores, into more of like a graph with like what's it called, like a histogram? A histogram. And yeah, in that you can see that the shapes of like all the results, with like the bell curves and everything, they basically are congruent. Like they're basically the same shape. So like the majority are actually very close together. So there's not really a gap there. You know, there are very few realities where a gap really is there, like in apartheid South Africa. Like that was an extreme difference in the social realities of the two social groups. And yeah, speaking of extremes, he points out, for example, Brazil is one of the most unequal nations, but the majority of people, when you look at the real graph and stuff, they still live on level 3. So, still in the middle, even though there's a very low bottom and a very high ceiling. And lastly, the view from up here, which is basically describing how when you're at the top, looking down, everything else looks really small. Which reminds me of there was this I think Fox News segment where they were trying to like delegitimize welfare and claiming that like, yeah, you know, these people claim to be poor, but like 98% or so of them have a fridge. And it was like, the fuck are you talking about? I would fucking hope that everyone has a fridge. Like, as if having a fridge is not actually, like, a necessity. It's just a banana. What could it cost? $10? Yeah, like that. Like, living without a fridge is actually more expensive because you gotta get everything fresh. And yeah, at the end of the chapter, basically he concedes that, like, yeah, this is a very oversimplified thing, but you know, they replace a wrong oversimplification with a more correct one. Yeah, let me read out the summary at the end of the chapter. Factfulness is recognizing when a story talks about a gap, and remembering that this paints a picture of two separate groups, with a gap in between. The reality is often not polarized at all. Usually the majority is right there in the middle, where the gap is supposed to be. To control the gap instinct, look for the majority. Beware comparisons of averages. If you could check the spreads, you would probably find they overlap. There's probably no gap at all. Beware comparisons of extremes. In all groups of countries or people, there are some at the top and some at the bottom. The difference is sometimes extremely unfair, but even then the majority is usually somewhere in between, right where the gap is supposed to be. And the view from up here. Remember, looking down from above distorts the view. Everything else looks equally short, but it's not. Okay. Chapter 2, the negativity instinct. He starts that one with an anecdote about how when he was a little child, he almost died drowning in a sewage ditch, which was running in front of his grandma's house. So, the mega misconception at stake here is that the world is getting worse. And he starts with, this chapter is about the negativity instinct, our tendency to notice the bad more than the good, which I found interesting because, like, hang on. Where is it? There we go. Let me bring up the thing here. And the reception in the criticism section. He was accused of Pollyannaism. The Pollyanna principle, also called Pollyannaism or positivity bias, is the tendency for people to remember pleasant items more accurately than unpleasant ones. Research indicates that at the subconscious level, the mind tends to focus on the optimistic, while at the conscious level it tends to focus on the negative. This is very interesting. On the subconscious level, the mind tends to focus on the optimistic, while the conscious tends to focus on the negative. Which I guess explains, yeah. Is that why it's... Is that why what? We like glorify high school? Yeah, exactly. Like, we look back with rose-tinted glasses, but also we remember... But looking at the present, we tend to be more focused on the negative. So, he hears a lot that things are getting worse. And yeah, he does concede that a lot of things are pretty bad. To quote again, the number of war fatalities has been falling since the Second World War, but with the Syrian war, the trend has reversed. Terrorism too is rising. We'll get back to that in chapter 4. Ooh. Overfishing and the deterioration of the seas are truly worrisome. The lists of dead areas in the world's oceans and of endangered species are getting longer. Ice is melting. Sea levels will continue to rise by probably 3 feet over the next 100 years. There's no doubt it's because of all the greenhouse gases humans have pumped into the atmosphere, which won't disperse for a long time, even if we stop adding more. The collapse of the US housing market in 2008, which no regulators had predicted, was caused by widespread illusions of safety in abstract investments, which hardly anyone understood. The system remains as complex now as it was then, and a similar crisis could happen again, maybe tomorrow. I just thought this paragraph in particular about the investments and stuff, that felt relevant to share. But yeah, he gets into, in order for this planet to have financial stability, peace, and protected natural resources, there's one thing we can't do without, and that's international collaboration, based on a shared and fact-based understanding of the world. The current lack of knowledge about the world is therefore the most concerning problem of all. So that kind of gets into what I was saying earlier about it doesn't help to have this overly negative view. In order to actually keep improving the world, you need to have real facts about the world and also the motivation to even think that there is the possibility of further improvement. Oopsie daisy. I've always tried to be... I've been getting oddly hyper-specifically reflective on my adolescence, I guess because I'm entering my 30s. Like, I've always tried to be conscious of not glorifying it, but lately I've been like, okay, what did I actually enjoy and how good was it really? Oh. Yeah, that's very important. Did you come to any interesting conclusions there? But yeah, another graph showing that across the world, more than half of people think that the world is getting worse. Not improving, not even staying the same, just getting worse. Next caption is Statistics as Therapy, which I think is pretty neat. And yeah. Well, let me just read out again. It is easy to be aware of all the bad things happening in the world. It's harder to know about the good things. Billions of improvements that are never reported. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking about some trivial positive news to supposedly balance out the negative. I'm talking about fundamental improvements that are world-changing but are too slow, too fragmented, or too small one by one to ever qualify as news. I'm talking about the secret silent miracle of human progress. I think that's very poignant. I had this discussion about this with my mom a while ago, and she had a hard time accepting that there's like overall good trends happening. I realized the times I was happiest and most productive was when I was not living with my mother. When me and my mom had opposite schedules, so she was at work most of my waking hours, is when I finally started studying Japanese. Yeah, that is a good call. Good thing to learn about yourself. A good first step towards, something actionable. Yeah, all these trends and stuff, they are totally publicly available. on the UN website or whatever, you know? Somewhere, I'm sure. I don't know. Yeah, completely free online is what he says. So like, people call his lectures like super inspirational, but it's really just laying out the facts, you know? So... yay. And he has a graph showing extreme poverty rates from 1800 to today, where 85% were in extreme poverty. And it wasn't until 1966. Until 1966, like 50% lived in extreme poverty. And now then in 2017, it was a 9%. Life expectancy. Life expectancy. Once again, one of those areas where, interesting. So, in life expectancy, the US and Canada, followed by Finland, Sweden, and the Nobel Lindau meeting, were around a third who answered correctly, with an estimate of 70 years for the global life expectancy. And the US and Canada were even at 43% correct. And interestingly enough, like Norwegian teachers, Swedish Trade Union, the US Skeptics Conference, Swedish Ministry of Finance, etc., etc. All of those scored worse. So like, it appears to be a question where the better educated you are, the more ignorant you seem to be of the actual reality. So that's interesting. Which might be... I guess that might be because of outdated information. Yeah. The most popular answer was 60 years, and that would have been correct if the question was asked in 1973. But it was not. So about here is where we stopped last time. Under the caption, I was born in Egypt. And then he has like this whole big graph about like where Sweden went from 1800 to 2017 in terms of the graph showing income and lifespan. I guess at this point I might as well stop showing this part and start showing this thing again. What? Let's see, where's Sweden? Sweden. Average daily income and life expectancy, yes. Anyone like to? So, so he says, the Sweden I was born into in 1948 was where Egypt is on the health wealth map today. That is to say, it was right in the middle of level 3. Life conditions in 1950s Sweden were similar to those in Egypt or other countries on level 3 today. There were still open sewage ditches, and it wasn't uncommon for children to drown in bodies of water close to home. And going backwards, when his mother was born in 1921, Sweden was like Zambia is now. That's level 2. Oh yeah, that reminds me of Danny Sexbang, or Danny Game Grumps. His grandmother still traveled across the US in like a, what's it called, a station wagon? One of those things? A horse-drawn carriage? But also, to quote, today people in Afghanistan and other countries on level 1 live much longer lives than Swedes did back in 1863. This is because basic modernizations have reached most people and improved their lives drastically. They have plastic bags to store and transport food. They have plastic buckets to carry water and soap to kill germs. Most of their children are vaccinated. On average, they live 30 years longer than Swedes did in 1800, when Sweden was on level 1. That is how much life even on level 1 has improved. Then there's a bunch of cool graphs that I could have taken photos of, but I didn't. I like this paragraph. It is hard to see any of this global progress by looking out your window. It is taking place beyond the horizon. But there are some clues you can tune into if you pay close attention. Listen carefully. Can you hear a child practicing the guitar or the piano? That child is not drowned and is instead experiencing the joy and freedom of making music. The goal of higher income is not just bigger piles of money. The goal of longer lives is not just extra time. The ultimate goal is to have the freedom to do what we want. Me, I love the circus and playing computer games with my grandchildren and zapping through TV channels. Culture and freedom, the goals of development, can be hard to measure, but guitars per capita is a good proxy. And boy, has that improved. With beautiful statistics like these, how can anyone say the world is getting worse? And then he has a graph about guitars per capita. Playable guitars per million people, which went from 200 in 1962 to 11,000 in 2014. Okay, next up is the negativity instinct. Getting right into that. So, right, there's this story about Lasse Berg, who wrote an excellent report from rural India in the 1970s. And then he returned 25 years later to the same area. And, he had the photos of how they lived before and could see, like, how much they have improved. And he showed those photos to the people there, and they were like, no, this can't be here. You must be mistaken. We've never been that poor. Like most people, they were living in the moment, busy with new problems, like the children watching immoral soap operas, or not having enough money to buy a motorbike. So that really gets into the whole rose-tinted thing. And then there's, selective reporting. We hear all about the bad stuff, not so much about the good. And yeah, the terrible irony is that, to quote, this improved reporting, you know, the fact that we know about all these negative things happening is a sign of human progress, but it creates the impression of the exact opposite. At the same time, activists and lobbyists skillfully manage to make every dip in a trend appear to be the end of the world, even if the general trend is clearly improving. Yeah. Yeah, we keep getting bad news about what's currently happening. And it's exacerbated, the stress of that is exacerbated by not really having a clear idea of how bad things were before. Which, I guess in a sense, kind of applies to my current mental health situation too, doesn't it? Feeling abandoned, not really understanding just how isolated I was, like, you know, years ago. Is there something there? Next caption, feeling, not thinking. What are people really thinking when they say the world is getting worse? My guess is they're not thinking, they are feeling. So this is an interesting one. If you still feel uncomfortable agreeing that the world is getting better, even after I've shown you all this beautiful data, my guess is that it's because you know that huge problems still remain. My guess is you feel that me saying that the world is getting better is like me telling you that everything is fine, or that you should look away from these problems and pretend they don't exist. And that feels ridiculous and stressful. I find it interesting that he doesn't seem to get into the fact that, like, people just really don't like having their conception of the world questioned, because we like to have this very stable idea of, like, what the world is like, and it's stressful to change anything about that, even when it's negative. Like, it reminds me of a friend I had a long time ago. And who didn't like being told that, like, she's pretty or even that she's not ugly, because her mother kept telling her that she's ugly. And, like, you know, having to reconsider that instead of just saying, like, yeah, that's just how it is. I've come to accept this as reality, you know? Instead of that, it's like, you know, it's more comfortable to stay just thinking that, like, yeah, you know, my mom was right. I don't remember how I started that sentence, but basically it's stressful to consider that, like, yeah, no, now I have to contend with the fact that, like, maybe my mom is an asshole, and what do I do with that now, you know? Welcome back, Creeper. So, so yeah, he does agree that things are not fine. I mean, especially, you know, a really poignant one is that, like, there is one of these 16 graphs of bad things decreasing. Child labor. Share of children aged 15 to 14 who work full-time under bad conditions went from 28... Hello! Hi there, Windbreaker. Went from 28% in 1950 to 10% in 2012, which is still so much. So yeah, that's still really bad. But it is an improvement. Hello, Windbreaker, thank you for the hydrate. I thought these were positive graphs. Children yearn for the mines, of course. That's Mines obviously wouldn't be counted because it's not bad conditions. Music is too loud, really? Really? Am I that quiet? Okay. I can decrease it. I hope that's alright. Okay. Might be in the headset. So, yeah, here we're getting into this thing. People often call me an optimist because I show them the enormous progress they didn't know about. That makes me angry. I'm not an optimist. That makes me sound naive. I'm a very serious possibilist. That's something I made up. It means someone who neither hopes without reason nor fears without reason. Someone who constantly resists the overdramatic worldview. As a possibilist, I see all this progress and it fills me with conviction and hope that further progress is possible. This is not optimistic. It is having a clear and reasonable idea about how things are. It is having a worldview that is constructive and useful. And here, this one I think is important. When people wrongly believe that nothing is improving, they may conclude that nothing we have tried so far is working, and lose confidence in measures that actually work. I meet many such people who tell me they have lost all hope for humanity, or they may become radical, supporting drastic measures that are counterproductive when, in fact, the methods we are already using to improve our world are working just fine. I too am a possibilist. I am bigoted against the possibility. Well, have fun with that, I guess. For example, girls' education. Girls' education has proven to be a great idea. The workforce becomes diversified and able to make better decisions and solve more problems. Educated mothers have fewer children, and more of the children survive. And more, they can invest more time in each child's education, which is a virtuous cycle of change. So, how to control the negativity instinct? Bad and better. Better. Not badder, but better. The solution is not to balance out all the negative views with more positive news. That would just risk creating a self-deceiving, comforting, misleading bias in the other direction. It would be as helpful as balancing too much sugar with too much salt. It won't make things more exciting, but maybe even less healthy. Again with the sugar. He persuades himself to keep two thoughts in his head at the same time. When he's saying that things are getting better, he's not saying that that things are just, that you shouldn't worry and you should relax. He gives this idea of a premature baby in an incubator. Thank you for the streak. Thank you so much for the streak. A premature baby in an incubator, like the baby's health status is extremely bad. And after a week, it's still bad, but improving. Health is still critical, still needs to be in an incubator, but it is improving. The incubator is working. So the situation is bad, but it is getting better. Thank you for the head pats. Teiyu, random question. What are the VTubing plans? Honestly, I might quit. To be quite honest. I mean, yeah. There's a very distinct possibility. It's been constantly crossing my mind recently. Why? Because everything sucks? I don't know. Maybe it's just my hormones from like situations, from the medical situation, making everything feel more dramatic. Are you not enjoying it? It's difficult. I mean, I feel like I would be enjoying this if I didn't also have like a social situation right now that's really demoralizing right now. But also, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of reading to myself. I've already read all this, so it's like, I don't know. Sorry. Sorry. I'm grateful to all of you who are out there and listening. Not just, I don't know. Sorry. Let's keep moving on. Nice no life. Okay, I don't know. So, next one is expect bad news. That is another way to control the negativity instinct. I don't know if I've fully understood this one. When you hear about something terrible, calm yourself by asking, if there had been an equally large positive improvement, would I have heard about that? Even if there had been hundreds of larger improvements, would I have heard? Would I ever hear about children who don't drown? Can I see a decrease in child drownings or in deaths from tuberculosis? Out my window or on the news or in the charity's publicity material? A charity's publicity material. Keep in mind that the positive changes may be more common, but they don't find you. You need to find them. Yeah. So you can expect news to be bad, but you have to look yourself for the positive. And the third is don't censor history. Just look back and see how shitty things were. Yeah. Stuff does indeed sometimes suck. And then he ends that chapter on one titled, I Would Like to Thank Society, which is picking back up from... Oh, hey, that's a new version of the song. Picking back up from the whole anecdote about almost drowning in a sewage ditch. Oh, sorry, my brain wandered there for a moment. And yeah, then, he didn't realize back then that he would grow up to be a professor of global health and travel to Davos and tell a world's expert that they know less about basic global trends than chimpanzees. Deep breath, okay. Thank you, Malon. Or is it Malon? This might be. What's her name? Not Cremia. Cremia is the older one. I'm blanking on the name. Oh well. For the singing, by the way, that's what I'm referring to. I'm not calling Kleeper Cremia or another name. Romani, that's the name. So. Yeah, let's read out this whole thing. During my lifetime, Sweden moved from level 3 to level 4, a treatment against tuberculosis was invented and my mother got well, she read books to me that she borrowed from the public library for free. I became the first in my family to get more than 6 years of education, and I went to university for free. I got a doctor's degree for free. Of course, nothing is free, the taxpayers paid. And then, at the age of 30, when I had become a father of 2 and I discovered my first cancer, I was treated and cured by the world's best healthcare system for free. This reads very differently when you know that he then died of cancer later, like before this book was published. What a champ. My survival and success in life have always depended on others. Thanks to my family, free education and free healthcare, I made it all the way from that ditch to the World Economic Forum. I would never have made it on my own. So, summary of this whole chapter. Factfulness is recognizing when we get negative news and remembering that information about bad news is much more likely to reach us. When things are getting better, we often don't hear about them. This gives us a systematically too negative impression of the world around us, which is very stressful. To control the negativity instinct, expect bad news. Better and bad. Practice distinguishing between a level, e.g. bad, and a direction of change, e.g. better. Convince yourself that things can be both better and bad. Good news is not news. Good news is almost never reported, so news is almost always bad. When you see bad news, ask whether equally positive news would have reached you. Gradual improvement is not news. When a trend is gradually improving with periodic dips, you're more likely to notice the dips than the overall improvement. More news does not equal more suffering. More bad news is sometimes due to better surveillance of suffering, not a worsening world. And beware of rosy pasts. People often glorify their early experiences, and nations often glorify their histories. So now we're getting into parts that I didn't even read with a marker, but I just read earlier in the park. Or last night in bed. So let's see. The Straight Line Instinct, Chapter 3. He starts with the most frightening graph he ever saw, which was about an Ebola outbreak in West Africa. He didn't realize until it was very late that it's not a straight line, but in fact a doubling one. It didn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it went 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. And finally took action and went there to help, you know. As a physician and whatnot. Okay. And yeah, he wishes he had understood and acted sooner on the, understanding that it's not linear. So, the following misconception is that the world population is just increasing and increasing. About sustainability. There's a lot of conferences about sustainability and whatnot, about the global population, and yeah, the world population is increasing, increasing very quickly, but not just increasing. He got speechless when he asked people like, based on the graph of the number of children in the world from 1950 to 2017, I assume. How many children were there expected to be in 2100? 2100, yes. And people assumed it would just keep rising to 4 billion. But it doesn't. It basically stagnates at 2 billion. By the way, there's an ad break incoming. Sorry about that. I'm not gonna take a break for that one because I don't think we're gonna be going for terribly much longer. So there's this really impressive graph of like the population that just rose incredibly much in like the last couple hundred years. Like it's a huge shoot upward. So you know it's natural that people think like, oh man, this has like so much momentum. It's like going boom. And you know that instinct makes sense. You know, like when you, for example, calculate the trajectory of an animal running at you or something, you know? But now, he gives an interesting example of his youngest grandchild, who was 19.55 inches long when he was born. And in his first 6 months, he grew to 26.5 inches. And man, if you just kept going at that rate, he will be 60 inches tall on his 3rd birthday. That's crazy. Someone's got to do something about that. And you know, obviously that sounds dumb, because we all know that a child just stops growing at some point. But yeah, when we're less familiar with something, it's easier to fall victim to that assumption. But yeah, the forecast is that by 2100, the 7.6 billion people that there were in 2017 will have risen to 11, which is not nearly as dramatic. And it will just keep flattening. So why is the population increasing? And it's increasing because, well, there will be more adults. The adults will simply keep living, you know, the children who aren't dying will keep living to be adults. Oh, here's an interesting little line. The UN experts are not predicting that the number of children will stop increasing. They are reporting that it is already happening. And welcome back. So yeah, and just to summarize for anyone who missed that, basically, people keep thinking that the population will keep shooting upwards, uncontrolled, but instead, it makes much more sense to think of it like a growing child. Which makes a lot of sense, like, you know, humanity as a whole works a lot like an organism, I think. And like, an organism will always adjust to its surroundings, to its circumstances, and the resources available. Back in, you know, the, you know, in like extreme poverty, having many children was basically a kind of insurance. You know, many of them will die, and you need them to support you, stuff like that. But the more you actually have access to these resources, the more you'll want to actually just make the most of those resources. And by that I mean, like, you know, not overextend them. No. Yeah, hang on, let me read this out. This dramatic change happened in parallel with all those other improvements I described in the last chapter. As billions of people left extreme poverty, most of them decided to have fewer children. They no longer needed large families for child labor on the small family farm, and they no longer needed extra children as insurance against child mortality. Women and men got educated and started to want better educated and better fed children, and having fewer of them was the obvious solution. In practice, that goal was easier to realize thanks to the wonderful blessing of modern contraceptives, which let parents have fewer children without having less sex. So, So it's already happening. Okay. And yeah, then there's a whole thing where, like, he splits up in a graph the children by the people by age group, and basically shows that the coming population growth will come from people basically filling up the gaps of people who died earlier without there being an increase in the actual number of children being born. Next caption is in balance with nature. Have you heard people say that humans used to live in balance with nature? Well, there was a balance, yeah. But the balance was that, people died a lot. Like, there used to be an old balance where people barely got by, and now we're reaching a new balance. Basically, yeah. We used to die in balance, and now we live in balance. Or we are starting to live in balance. Next caption is, wait, they still have many children, they in quotation marks. And, talks about a bunch of extreme examples about, like, people in Africa and Latin America still having lots of children, and religious people refusing contraceptives and stuff. But, yeah, no, those are extremes. And basically just that. Mostly that's just extremes. Next one. Why more survivors lead to fewer people? Yeah. When combining all the parents living on levels 2, 3, and 4 from every religion of the world, and of every religion or no religion, together they have an average of 2 children. Hey there, Hepper. Hi. How are you doing? When people hear that the population is growing, they intuitively think it will continue to grow unless something is done. They intuitively visualize the trend continuing into the future. But remember, for my grandchild Mino to stop growing taller, nothing drastic needs to be done. God, there's... He talks about Melinda Gates's philanthropic foundation, which, saves the life of millions of children in extreme poverty by investing in primary health care and education. And often hears, like, if you keep saving poor children, you'll kill the planet by causing overpopulation. I was like, no. No, the more the children survive, the less need there will be to keep birthing more children. It's where the child mortality rate is the highest that women have the most children. Quoting again. I don't care much for the assertion that child mortality is the solution to overpopulation. Yeah, it is not great. Saving poor children just increases the population sounds correct, but the opposite is true. Delaying the escape from extreme poverty just increases the population. Every generation kept in extreme poverty will produce an even larger next generation. The only proven method for curbing population growth is to eradicate extreme poverty and give people better lives, including education and contraceptives. Across the world, parents then have chosen for themselves to have fewer children. This transformation has happened across the world, but it has never happened without lowering child mortality. And of course, that's not even getting to the most important point, which is just the moral imperative to help people escape from misery and the indignity of extreme poverty. Yeah. It's not great to imagine that you're trying to save the world for some kind of nebulous future when there's so much suffering happening right now, but you don't even need to choose between the two. Some people need to suffer so the world can function properly is... Oh, yeah. It is less than optimal. Not a good look, as the kids say. You know what, let's read this one. 2 public health miracles. In the first full year of Bangladesh's independence, 1972, Bangladeshi women had on average 7 children and life expectancy was 52. Today, Bangladeshi women have 2 children and a newborn can expect to live for 73 years. In 4 decades, Bangladesh has gone from miserable to decent, from level 1 to level 2. It is a miracle, delivered through remarkable progress in basic health and child survival. The child survival rate is now set 97%, up from less than 80% at independence. Now that parents have reason to expect that all their children will survive, a major reason for having big families is gone. In Egypt in 1960, 30% of all children died before their 5th birthday. The Nile Delta was a misery for children, with all sorts of dangerous diseases and malnutrition. Then a miracle happened. The Egyptians built the Aswan Dam. They wired electricity into people's homes, improved education, built up primary health care, eradicated malaria, and made drinking water safer. Today, Egypt's child mortality rate at 2.3% is lower than it was in France or the United Kingdom in 1960. Okay. Now, how to control the straight line instinct. Or, not all lines are straight. Hang on, let me take a sip. So, he goes into a bunch of different kinds of lines there are. Straight lines are actually quite uncommon. You could argue that, there's... Oh, hang on. It's still showing Sweden. Oops. Or, yeah, Sweden. Can I... Oh, it's... Where the heck is it? Where did Sweden go? Where's my boy Sweden? There we are. Okay. Yeah. You could make a pretty decent straight line between these. Hang on. Let me zoom in. There we go. Can I go further up? There we go. Yeah. Basically it shows that money and health go hand in hand, which, you know, I don't... a little thought that has crossed my mind reading this is that, like, it feels a little, like, centric to our system, our, like, kind of capitalist, money-based system, but, you know, I guess that's just kind of how it works. And, yeah, basically money means, you know, having power to do things. And, yeah, that makes sense. Having money, when countries have power to do things, they'll, generally improve in terms of life expectancy and stuff. Yeah, there's also similar straight line relationships between income level and average length of education in years, or the average age at first marriage, or share of income used for recreation and culture. Welcome back. But yeah, generally lines like that are pretty uncommon. Then there's S-bends, which is the same kind of thing we see with expected, projected population growth, where it goes straight for a while, and then goes up, and then it evens out again. Flattens off. Yeah. Just as we will buy ourselves a fridge and a cell phone as soon as we can afford them, countries will invest in primary education and vaccination as soon as they can afford them. Then the lines flatten off at levels 3 and 4. Everyone already has these things. The curves reach their maximum and stay there. If you need someone to lend an ear, I'm here. In Discord, I mean, didn't you leave the Discord again, though? It's some new sociological article? Not actually. This is a book called Factfulness. No. Hi there, Poirot. Yeah, I appreciate the offer. Well, you got what I mean. I will rejoin if you need it. I mean, I would love to have you rejoin, just to have you there. Yeah, thank you. Hi, Poirot. How are you doing? So. And then there's slides, which I guess are just like the thing but in reverse. Yeah, like the babies per woman curve. It starts flat, then, you know, it stays at like about 2 per woman. I should send some raccoon stuff on the server. Long time since last raccoon attack, please do. Oh yeah, another interesting example. Shifting away from income graphs for a moment, we see a similar shape for the cost of vaccinations. In basic math classes, we teach children to multiply. If an injection costs $10, what's the price of 1,000,000 injections? UNICEF knows how to count, but it has also saved millions of children's lives by not accepting a straight line. It has negotiated huge contracts with pharmaceutical companies, in which the price is cut to the bare minimum in return for guaranteed long contracts. But when you have negotiated to the bottom price, you can't get lower. That's another slight-shaped curve. Hercule Poirot. Hercule Poirot and the Murder on the Colonial Express. Second person in the entire Twitch history to recognize what my username means. Oh, really? Oh my god, it somehow never occurred to me. Like, I don't know. My instinct is just to read a name like that, kinda in Japanese adjacent, like Poirot. So, it never occurred to me to pronounce it like poirot, you know? Putting the emphasis on the second syllable. And then there's humps. Where he gives the example of like a tomato. Like, the tomato plant needs water, so why don't you just turn on the hose and keep it watered? Because, you know, then it's too much, obviously. Yeah, there are some phenomena that are lower in countries on level 1 and countries on level 4, but higher in the middle income countries. Dental health, for instance. Dental health is really low, is really okay in, let's call it cavities. Cavities are low in extreme poverty countries because they don't have access to a lot of like high sugar nutrients, high sugar food. But then, you know, it rises again in level 3 and level 2, because as soon as people can afford to have sweets and stuff, they'll eat it. And then it drops off again, you know, when you get better access to healthcare, to toothbrushes and stuff. Carbs also cause cavities, not just sugar. Oh, yeah, right. But like, carbs are sugar if you break it down enough, you know. In Russian, just might not be readily available carbs in those countries. I don't know. I think it just depends on like how like what shape the carbs have once they enter the mouth. Like if you have like potatoes or something, yeah. Once you eat something like a potato and chew on it a bunch, then it starts getting sweet. But yeah, they're less concentrated. Okay. And then there's the doubling line, like in the Ebola case. The world of transport also contains many doubling patterns. As people's incomes increase, the distance they travel each year keeps doubling, so does the share of their income that they spend on transport. On level 4, transport is behind 1/3 of all CO2 emissions, which also double with income. Poor countries eat more plant food, and it has less carbs and requires more energy to digest. Oh yeah, that's an interesting question. I was wondering for a while why these levels are divided like this. You know, when you look at a graph, you always have to question, like, why is it presented the way that it is? And you know, these levels are divided by like, down there, $2 between level 1 and level 2, then 8 and then 32 per day. And then it's like, hey, isn't this misleading? Doesn't this mean that, like, you know, when they're at level 1 and level 2, that's like still like really low? But, you know, he does have a point that he's gonna make now, which is that money just works that way, you know? Like, I have divided the levels in this way because that's how money works. The impact of an additional dollar is not the same on different levels. On level 1, with $1 a day, another dollar buys you that extra bucket. That is life-changing. On level 4, with $64 a day, another dollar has almost no impact. But with another $64 a day, you could build a pool or buy a summer house. That's life-changing for you. The world is extremely unfair, but doubling one's income from any starting point is always life-changing. I use this doubling scale whenever I compare income because that's how money works. Yes, Afera. It's almost like developing countries is a good framework. The thing you need to take into account is purchasing power of the local currency. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Most countries can fully satisfy its food needs, but the large corporations mostly focus on suppressing local farm production. Yeah, but yeah. But the situation is improving. That is basically the whole idea of this whole thing. Is that, like, the conditions are improving. There is still a lot of work to be done, but it's important not to lose hope or to try some kind of crazy, perhaps, what's it called? Reactionary thing, strategy, because you feel like nothing is working. How the hell, cat? The actual calculation multiply the ratio of the stuff you can buy by the exchange rate. Most importantly, though, hydrate. Yes. Damn, that's a cat and he's in hell. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Just got back from a hike. This is new content. It is. It's been 11 months and change since I last did a study stream. And it was on this exact thing. So, okay. Now, how much of the curve do you see? Curves come in many different shapes. To understand a phenomenon, we need to make sure we understand the shape of its curve. By assuming we know how a curve continues beyond what we see, we will draw the wrong conclusions and come up with the wrong solutions. That is what I did before I realized that the Ebola epidemic was doubling, and that is what everyone is doing who thinks the world population is just increasing. And yeah, that is the end of that chapter. Factfulness is recognizing the assumption that a line will just continue straight, and remembering that such lines are rare in reality. To control the straight line instinct, remember that curves come in different shapes. Don't assume straight lines. Many trends do not follow straight lines, but are S-bends, slides, humps, or doubling lines. No child ever kept up the rate of growth it achieved in its first 6 months, and no parents would expect it to. Teiyu auditioning into V theorem? I mean, I'm not a scientist, I just read books and, tell you guys about it. I'm guilty of following you for 2.5 years, and actually being on no more than 4 to 5 streams. Yeah, I've been in that position. There's some people I've watched like once. I followed them and then I was like, oh, they seem nice, and then, just never went back there again. Maybe we should just start a Minecraft farm and chill there? What? Okay. Y'all, I'm out of here. I've talked about everything that I read up on, and, yeah. It's time to raid out. And, yeah, I guess maybe after tomorrow I'll go on an indefinite hiatus. Maybe tomorrow will be the last stream before I just stop for a while. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, y'all. Anyone who's been watching on YouTube, thank you so much for that, and take care. Bye-bye.